You got to get that.
Meeting is now streaming live on custom live streaming service.
Yep.
When Terry Ann says it is, it is. She's the boss.
It's ready.
Okay, let's begin the meeting of the Planning Committee, May 6th. Due to shelter in place and COVID-19, the authority has chosen Zoom as its meeting platform. During the meeting, please mute your mic. If you haven't already done so, please mute your mic now. Jackie, take the roll, please.
Okay, David Hudson, Chair.
Yes, I'm here.
Chris Kelly, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Loella Haskew, Commissioner.
Yes.
Commissioner Kevin Romick.
Yes.
Commissioner Karen Mitchoff. And we are missing Commissioner Karen Mitchoff.
That's it. Okay, so we're in pretty good shape. The Zoom meeting instructions are as follows. I will request any committee questions and comments on an agenda item. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature of Zoom. Jackie or I, or the next chair, will call upon you. Staff will unmute your mic. After you speak, staff will remute your mic and lower your hand. I will request any public comment. If any public attending the meeting wishes to speak during an agenda item, please raise your hand or press *9 if you are on the phone. Jackie or I will call upon you to speak and unmute your mic. You will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, your mic will be automatically muted and your hand will be lowered. If an action is required on an agenda item, the chair will call the vote. Jackie will conduct a roll call vote. When Jackie calls upon you, staff will unmute your mic, you'll vote, and then staff will remute your mic. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is now open. Is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on any item that is not part of the agenda? Do we have any cards, Jackie? Where'd you
We
go?
do,
Oh, there you are.
we do not have any cards. However, I would like to announce that Commissioner Karen Mitchoff has made the meeting.
Okay, and I don't show any attendance in, so I will just assume that there are no public comments because we've received no cards and public comment is closed. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from January 8th, 2020. Are there any changes, comments, et cetera, motions from the
Move
committee?
to approve.
We have didn't even get to finish it. We have a motion, Haskew. a
Second.
Romick. Nope, Mitchoff beat him. Well, Kevin, you gotta wake up. That
Well,
backyard.
okay, I gotta unmute myself every once in a while.
Okay, so you have a motion, Haskew, a second, Mitchoff. Please conduct the roll call vote. Jackie.
Okay, we have Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff,
Yes.
Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Hudson,
Yes,
and Commissioner Romick.
Yes.
okay. Well, minutes have passed. We're gonna skip the election. No, we're not, are we? The next item on the agenda is the elections.
Mr. Chair, may I just move forward and nominate Chris Kelly as our chair and Kevin Romick as our vice chair?
Good, I'll second it. Jackie, take the vote.
Okay, we have, okay. Sorry. Okay, so Commissioner Haskew,
Aye. Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff,
Yes,
Commissioner
had
Romick.
I've had
Yes.
5 Zoom meetings today.
I only had 4.
Commissioner Romick,
Yes.
Chair Hudson,
Yes,
and Vice Chair Kelly.
Yes.
not anymore. It's yours, Chris. You're on.
Okay, so,
consent.
Okay.
so now the virtual gavel will be handed over to Chair Kelly, our new chair for PC.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like the next item is the consent calendar. There are 2 items on the consent calendar. Would anyone care to pull an item?
Move approval.
Second,
Second.
gotta be quicker.
First by Romick, seconded by Haskew. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. We have committee member Haskew,
Yes.
committee member Hudson,
Yes,
committee member Mitchoff,
Yes.
vice chair Romick,
Yes.
and chair Kelly.
Yes, thank you. So now we move on to regular agenda items. And the next regular agenda item will be an update on the Growth Management Program Task Force efforts to implement SB 743 presented by Matt. Matt?
Thank you, Chair Kelly. I almost thought they were talking about me when they were announcing the new chair.
If staff only
we'll find you a
wishes,
chair.
only wishes they could be chair.
Yeah,
Come on, joke, ha, ha, ha.
yeah. Okay, so David Early and I, David is from PlaceWorks. He's our on-call planning consultant covering both our congestion management and growth management program functions here at the authority. So we're going to present this, what's been going on over the last 6 months and where we think the future is heading, and we want to get your input on that. It's a very important update to the growth management program. So I'll get rolling here, and why don't I make this look like a presentation? There we go. So in 2018 and 2019, CCTA hosted a series of workshops for the Contra Costa planning directors and their staffs that its goal was to define the future work plan for the growth management program. The common theme that emerged from these workshops was, how will the growth management program change once SB 743 is implemented, and how can the authority support the jurisdictions in their local implementations? So starting in October 2019, we reconvened the Growth Management Program Task Force in order to address these issues and others identified during the workshops, with the team of PlaceWorks and Fair and Peers facilitating the process. The goals of the task force meetings are to develop a consistent countywide process of analyzing transportation in the growth management program using the new VMT metric that everybody's hearing about, which will replace level of service in CEQA. We've held 6 meetings to date of the task force, with our 7th being held tomorrow. Some background on SB 743. It was passed with the goals of encouraging infill development, especially around existing transit, encouraging a mix of uses, and promoting walking and biking, and hopefully leading to an overall reduction in transportation emissions. What changes for everyone is level of service that everyone's been used to over the last several decades is being replaced with vehicle miles traveled as a measure of environmental impact in CEQA. What doesn't change is the general plan guidelines don't change, fee programs don't change, and lead agencies are allowed to retain their own transportation metrics, including level of service. Let's see, next slide. Here's just a quick timing so you can see how long this has been worked on. It was passed in 2013. For the last 6 years, the guidelines have been developed and adopted through all these different state agencies. And as of July 1st, it becomes statewide law implemented to everyone, all lead agencies under CEQA, which is cities and counties. The actions that local agencies will need to take to comply with SB 743, they will need to, acting as lead agencies for their development projects under CEQA, they will be required to, for each project, to measure the VMT produced by each development, whether it be a housing development or a commercial development, and then establish thresholds for what qualifies as a low VMT project and can be screened out, and what thresholds are considered to be a significant impact, and then come up with feasible measures to mitigate that added VMT. I'm not going to get into how VMT works too much. I'll just let you look at these nice pictures here. Basically, the goal is to come up with a consistent method of measuring VMT, and how VMT is expressed or measured. On the far left, you can see that you can measure all VMT. Your home is in the middle. You can measure every single trip taken from that, but that's not a real good measure for what we're looking at. We think we need to look at home-based VMT and work-based VMT. So the home-based VMT basically just looks at trips originating at your home. Workplace VMT are trips going to and from the workplace. And those are generally longer in nature because there's fewer trips, or sorry, there's fewer long trips. Home-based VMTs are many more, but shorter trips, but they all add up. So as far as mitigation, what cities can do to potentially mitigate the VMT from their new developments is to look at the type of project, and if it's a housing project, maybe adding other uses to that project could lower its VMT if you put some retail or commercial work sites there. Second, the project can be built in a more VMT efficient area. Could move it away from a transit station to closer to a transit station. That would presumably screen it out from VMT analysis. And then there's TDM measures, free transit passes provided to residents of the development, bike and car share programs, or a shared workspace for the residents. Then there's the impact fee approach, which we currently use on the number of trips generated by a new development. And then there's the idea of a regional VMT exchange or a mitigation bank. This is similar to the cap and trade carbon credits that the state currently does. This is something that CCTA is very interested in and was actually a component of Measure J if it had passed. And we are currently seeking grant funding from Caltrans in order to fund developing our own framework for a mitigation banker exchange here in Contra Costa. So now I'm going to hand it over to David Early, who's going to talk about what the task force, how the task force has kind of decided to move forward with this new paradigm. David?
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be able to address you all tonight, even if it's remotely. I'm David Early with Placeworks, and I do serve as the lead for our on-call planning consulting team for CCTA. The task force, as Matt mentioned, has been meeting for several months now and has come to a series of agreements. I think the most important thing probably for you to understand and to really be proud of is the very strong agreement that all the cities and their staffs have in terms that our VMT threshold should be regionally consistent, just as we've always had regionally consistent thresholds regarding the measurement of LOS also. All of the cities and the county itself very much appreciate the coordinated planning efforts that have been going on, and they really want that to continue even as SB 743 changes the way we measure things. So they have asked that there be a consistent method of measuring VMT. CCTA is providing a great deal of value in developing a VMT measurement suite of tools that will be available to cities so that they don't have to do that on their own. And the cities in turn are wanting to agree that there should be a consistent analysis method across the county. They have also agreed that we all want to continue to use LOS analysis for some purposes. It's only through a delay-based analysis like LOS that we can understand where we need improvements to individual intersections or roadways to maintain good traffic flow. So that will remain in place as well. So we've been working with the cities and the jurisdictions to resolve how we would mitigate VMT impacts from one adjacent to another, how to do it fairly in regard to the different urban characteristics of the various communities in the county. We've been considering the TDM and pricing models that Matt already suggested, and we've had a very strong interest in a mitigation bank as well. So those are all items that have already come before the committee, the task force, and they've already been working on. Next slide. So I have two slides here that go back to the two types of VMT that Matt already mentioned, residential VMT, and the next one looks at workplace related VMT. These are very complicated maps with a lot of data on them, but the big picture here is that if you look at the horizontal lines, the green line is the county average, the green dotted line is 85% of the county average. Same relationship for the Bay Area. The Bay Area region is the solid orange line, and 85% of the Bay Area is that dashed line. 85% is important because state guidance says that impacts can be considered less than significant if they are 15% or more less than the current rate. So that's 85% of the current rate. So if you can get below those dashed lines, then you have a less than significant impact. And you can see that some of our cities already start at or below those lines. So on this graphic, it's Richmond, El Cerrito, San Pablo, just to give you a few examples. If we can go to the next slide, Matt, you can see that for commute workers, we also have cities, particularly in East County, Antioch, Oakley, Brentwood, that are well below those regions, those regional averages. And those cities won't need to do any analysis at all as they move forward with projects of this type. If a city is currently above those averages, regional or county, whichever is higher, which makes it easier to achieve, if you are above that higher threshold, then what you need to do is bring your project back down to a level that does match that county threshold or regional threshold. So we'll be working on to resolve those issues and the details of that as we move forward. Next slide, Matt. So we are already going to be eliminating from analysis projects that meet any of the criteria you see here. I know time is short, so I'm not going to review them all, but if you have questions about those, I can answer them. And we will also eliminate from any analysis a project in an area that's below the existing regional or countywide VMT. Next slide. So we're working now with the committee to define the VMT metrics, to create a VMT screening process, to work on significance and mitigation criteria, to work on how to mitigate those impacts. That will be the subject of our meeting tomorrow with the task force, and we anticipate coming back to the authority board as a whole with a final plan within a month or two. And Matt, I think that wraps it up for me, and I can turn it back to you. Or did you want me to do this slide?
I'll take it, David. Thank you. So yeah, as David mentioned, the steps we're working on right now is focusing on that VMT threshold and mitigation policy for the GMP. You know, that goes back to your return to source funds. So you know, compliance with the GMP, you know, equates to your return to source. So we think this is a very important policy, and we're currently coming up with draft presentations that your staff or our staff can take to your council so you can educate them on this whole process, because a lot of, you know, especially elected officials haven't heard a lot about this. Staff knows about it, but it hasn't necessarily made its way up the chain. There's some other items we'll be working on, and you'll hear about those later, but basically we've got 3 more meetings to work through all this, but tomorrow will be where we really focus on that policy. So we wanted to get any input you may have on that policy or anything else we talked about today. But basically, we just wanted to tell you what's been happening for the last 6 or 7 months, and, you know, get your first reaction to that GMP policy.
Okay,
Everybody speak at once, huh?
thank you, thank you. So are there any comments on the board here? If so, just raise your physical hand. It's easier for me to see you that way. And Matt, if you can close your screen down so I can see people. Okay, Dave, do you have a comment?
Yeah, you're on the agenda item number 1, it says action. What are you looking for, Matt, for an action?
Really, the action would be if you had any direction to the task force or any input you wanted to provide on that policy. It was intended to be mostly information, but we wanted to give you at least a preview of that policy today.
Okay. Any other board comments? Does anyone from the public wish to
I
speak?
think you have Kevin.
Kevin, yes. Unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm on now. When do we plan on going out to the cities and for presentations to city councils with this? And
As soon as we have that PowerPoint ready, and I think PlaceWorks is finalizing that, we will make it available to your staffs, or we can come in either CCTA staff or the consultant. So over the next month.
okay, thank you.
If you wanted to schedule something already, we could start to get it onto calendars for 2 to 4 weeks from now.
Okay,
It
I'll
will be available over time for those cities that want to do it later. We'll be able to do it later in the midsummer, late summer as well, if that's.
The July 1st date is only a hard, fast date if you've got an active project. Otherwise, you got until your next CEQA project emerges.
Yeah, well, it'd be a good idea to get it out to staff as soon as we can and have them schedule these things. They know better than I do what is active and what may fall within the guidelines here that needs to be looked at.
Okay, Dave, did you have a comment?
Yes, after going through, like Karen just said, she's had 5 Zooms today. I've had 4. It might be worth exploring hitting the RTPCs all at once. And kind of like a SWAT meeting, and you're making the presentation there, Matt, with the staff on board, because they have an advisory count or whatever they call it themselves.
Yeah, so we went to the tax, all 4 tax over the last month. We weren't going to hit all the boards right now. We were going to wait till things were more fleshed out, but I am going to Transpac board next week, I think, whenever it is. But we would definitely make the rounds once we have a policy in place.
And just to clarify that a little bit more, this is a CCTA helping out the individual cities who are the lead agencies. So it seems important to us at the staff and consultant levels that the city councils themselves get a chance to understand this material. I know the RTPCs often function as funnels here, but because this is ultimately, we're developing criteria under which CEQA documents will be prepared, and those are the purview of the cities as the lead agency, we thought it appropriate to go to the cities directly in this particular case.
What I'm talking about is the cities will be online. I mean, everybody's on Zoom now, and an RTPC handling it, because a lot of these people have no idea what we do. My city, I think I've had one person that's been to a SWAT meeting besides me, and for the most part, they're just going to ask you or ask the staff member that's there, and they work together. So it just, if it's easier for you to do it 4 times instead of 20 times, that might be the way.
Yeah, and I would say WCTAC would like to see it very much. We'd be very interested.
Okay.
Any other board comments? Do we need a motion here or not?
It is action, so I'll move the item.
Okay, Karen, was the first. Is there a second?
Second, Kevin.
Second by Kevin. Any discussion? Okay, Jackie, can you take the roll call?
For Committee Member Haskew,
Yes.
Committee Member Hudson,
Yes, to accept the report.
Committee Member Mitchoff,
Yes.
Vice Chair Romick,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes. Okay,
Motion passes unanimously.
great, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is a discussion on recommendations from the Contra Costa Micromobility Forum presented by Matt. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to turn this one over at the beginning to David Early, who you're now familiar with. He led, his firm led this effort to introduce our local jurisdictions to the idea of micromobility if they weren't already familiar, and to talk about how to implement it in the county. So I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to do this presentation, as it says here, to tell you a little bit about what is micromobility, to talk about the forum that we held with your city staff members, and to talk about the recommendations that have come forward. And then Matt's going to move forward, talk more about those recommendations and what happened at the CBPAC as well. Next slide. So what do we mean by micromobility? Micromobility refers to essentially electric scooters and electric and pedal bicycles, all of which are available as shared forms of transportation that utilize the spaces already set aside for bicycles and that are suited for trips of 5 miles or less. They're publicly available systems, often privately funded and privately administered, and they exist as docked systems, as you see in this lower right-hand photo, as dockless systems where the piece of transportation infrastructure moves around and is left by the user in a arbitrary location, or hybrid systems that are docked, but where the bike or scooter can also be left outside of a dock. Next slide, please. So there are many providers within the San Francisco Bay Area. You've seen a few of these in Contra Costa, some in Walnut Creek. Richmond is rolling out a program now. El Cerrito had a program for a while. And they include companies that are focused solely on micromobility, like Bird, Lime, and Spin. There are vertically integrated companies like Lyft and Uber who have either acquired or opened their own micromobility offshoots. There are corporate providers who work directly with large corporations like Hacienda Business Park to provide this technology. And there are companies that focus more specifically on the platform of technology that allows these systems to be administered, but many of those companies run their own systems as well. So you have a large number of players in the marketplace. Next slide. So there's a lot of opportunities that are provided by micromobility. The big issue here, which is the third point on the slide, is that they're a great solution to what we call the first mile, last mile problem with transit. So if a person can take transit, perhaps they can drive to a BART station, take BART to their place of work, but then they have half a mile to get from BART to where they work. They often struggle wondering how are they going to make that last part of the trip. And a person who feels comfortable doing so can get on a scooter or a bike from that BART station and move through space and get to their workplace and solve that problem. Some people prefer to use them even to get from a home trip to transit. This can alleviate both parking needs and kiss and ride issues at transit stations. And in that sense, they reduce VMT, they reduce traffic congestion, and they reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There are challenges with micromobility, and I think any of you who have followed this are well aware of these things. There are issues with equity, that these tend to be deployed in areas where people are a little more wealthy, where densities are higher. Younger people and men are more comfortable using the technology sometimes than older people or women. We have people storing them improperly. Storage is kind of a euphemism for the mess you see in that lower right-hand picture, where people might just drop their scooter somewhere and it becomes a hazard on the sidewalk. They're also becoming kind of well known for having a very short operational life. Some of these scooters literally last only 2 or 3 months and then have to be disposed of. That's getting better in the industry. They are now getting to a year or 2 years of life, but there has been a real operational problem. There have been safety issues, low helmet usage, overall higher injury rates as compared to bicycles or other forms. There's very murky regulatory authority. Cities don't always have it together to regulate these methods, and the regulations can vary from one city to another, even though the bike or the scooter can easily go across city lines. And it can be difficult to attract private users, particularly in lower density areas where the densities might not be high enough to support a large amount of activity. So you've got a lot of challenges here that we wanted to look at. I'm going to skip over this slide and go on then to the next one. In Contra Costa County, as I mentioned already, you have seen some of this activity already. El Cerrito and Walnut Creek both had Lime bike programs a couple years ago. They were undocked bike programs, and you see that Lime bike here on the right upper picture. Bishop Ranch still has a docked program, and you see that pictured in the lower right corner. That's funded by Bishop Ranch, but people who work there can ride the bikes on campus and can even ride them off campus as long as they bring them back later on. And there are pending programs. I think Richmond's program may be either rolled out or very close to being rolled out. They're using the company called Gotcha to create a hybrid electric bike share using a grant from MTC. Walnut Creek is hoping to develop a scooter share pilot program and is currently developing that program at the staff level. And MTC is working on a Richmond to San Rafael e-bike commuting program. So that's obviously here in this county as well. We did hold a forum about all this on December 4th, 2019. We had 2 great panels First off, we had a panel of jurisdictions and agencies who are working in this, both locally in the county. We had Ozzie Arce from Walnut Creek. We also had Kirby Olson from the city of Oakland, and Heath Maddox, who currently works at BART, but actually oversaw the program for the city of San Francisco for a number of years. We got great information from all of them about what local programs are doing. And then we had the providers. We had one from Lime, one from Hopper, and one from Clever, who talked about how their business models work and what they need in order to make their programs work. So it was a great forum to educate us, to educate staff from your cities, and to be able to have a back and forth between agencies and the providers themselves. Next slide. So the forum came up with a series of recommendations. First, that they did want to look at establishing a countywide micromobility working group to try and coordinate efforts from one city to the next. They wanted to work with Bay Wheels, which is the MTC over the entity that MTC oversees, to have regional docked bike sharing. That exists today in San Francisco and in the inner East Bay, particularly in Oakland and Berkeley, and a little tiny bit in a few other places. It would be great to be able to see Bay Wheels come and deploy in Contra Costa County as well, whether it's in West County in Richmond and El Cerrito, or in Central County in Walnut Creek and so forth. They wanted to see us do that. They wanted to see us work to attract new micromobility programs, particularly offering financial support, and most particularly perhaps through securing grant funding. They wanted to perhaps see CCTA create a model ordinance and regulatory program, and they wanted to facilitate agency coordination with entities like the East Bay Regional Park District, who oversees the regional trails, with BART at BART stations, and with bus providers to think about how people might take a scooter or shared bike to a bus stop. So those are some of the recommendations that came out of the forum. Those have been memorialized in a white paper that staff has reviewed. And I think I'm going to turn it over from here to Matt to talk about the comments received in specific ways that we hope to move forward.
Thanks, David. Yeah, we received comments from stakeholders. Basically, we just heard from WCTAC and East Bay Regional Parks. But using these comments and in staff discussions, we wanted to move forward on some of the recommendations, but we really understand right now is a really difficult time to move forward with something like this. 4 months ago, micromobility was the biggest trend going, and today they've been removed from the streets because people just don't want to touch something that someone else has just touched. And travel is reduced by 80% in most locations. So we understand moving forward with, trying to, come up with a program to subsidize programs around the county or to attract providers right now. It just doesn't make sense. So what we are recommending to you is for the authority to move forward with developing a model ordinance that the cities can use when and if, we think on the other side of this, that all those travel needs are going to come back. People are still going to need to get from one place to another, those shorter trips. And so having a model ordinance in place that cities can adopt, and developing an associated regulatory framework that those cities can also adopt and have those in place. So when the providers come back, that we have something in place. And also we thought coordination between the regional agencies would be something we can easily do, mostly using staff time, because we already have a forum for working with the regional agencies. And the concern with East Bay Parks was that right now they allow certain types of micromobility devices on their trails, but not others. So we want to come up with kind of a consistent set of rules across the counties and in all these, high visibility locations or destinations, the transit stations, the Iron Horse trails, the things like that, where we know these are going to be used. So our recommendation today is to move forward with developing a model ordinance and regulatory framework for the cities to use moving forward, and to work with our regional agencies in coming up with consistent policies across the board. So I can take any questions you may have. And I will just say, one suggestion was to develop a working group specifically on this. And right now we have the Countywide Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we feel they could serve as a working group in the meantime. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt and David. I know this will come back, and I used to ride some of these bikes myself when I worked in San Francisco. I know how important it is. So if we can go back to the board, are there any board comments? And again, just raise your hand if you have some. Yeah, Luella, and unmic yourself.
I'm learning. So Walnut Creek was among the first to join the party out here. And there were some pretty significant issues in terms of managing, it was the Lime bike, and they were dumped everywhere and they crossed borders, and I'm sure Lime didn't like it any better than we did. And I think my concern with micromobility is it attracts a lot of attention when it first is in place, and it doesn't get cultured per se, and meaning that once all the novelty wears off, that there isn't much usage after that. And that was definitely what was happening with the Lime bikes. They were all over the place for a short amount of time, and then people just went back to old habits. So, and then my other concerns are safety, and how do we train the people who are using the mobility, and the fact that there really are differences between the needs of a highly compressed population versus the kind of spread out population. Walnut Creek has a little of both. So, there were the downtown users and out in the hinterland users. So what seems to be mostly a simple situation isn't at all. Done.
Okay, thank you, Luella. Kevin?
Yeah, I was following up on Luella's comment, and especially towards working towards a common measure that all cities can use to form ordinances with. There's quite a bit of difference between West County and especially Far East County. And I'm trying to figure out how we could create a common ordinance or one that someone could use with the disparities between the more concentrated western part of the county as opposed to Far East, where we're spread out. We don't have that many transit services to be able to use for that first and last mile. It's more like the first, last 5 or 10 miles, which may make it a little bit harder to convince people they need to get a bike or a scooter for a 2 or 3 mile jump between transit opportunities. And so I think, although I like the idea of creating a common goal for everyone, we have to realize that there is quite a bit of differences between where you live in the county and whatnot.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, would it be appropriate for me to respond to that for a moment?
Well, can I just say one thing and throw my comment in? I used to ride Bay Area Bike Share when I worked in San Francisco at a gaming company. I'd take Bart in, and then I'd hop on the bike, and then I'd go to my office. So it works really well for that first and last mile for regular trips and commuting. I prefer having a place to really park your bikes and not being allowed to leave them everywhere, because some people just tend to do that. And it can be a real problem, a real issue in Oakland too. So David, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, and I think the points are very well taken, that conditions are very different across the county. The ordinance would be one to regulate a private provider who might come and do business in a city. And I think honestly, it's going to be a while before they come to a dispersed area like East County. They're more likely to first come to Richmond or Walnut Creek or places like that. But if we put a model ordinance in place and those cities adopt them, and then if you did ultimately, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, if there were demand for them to come to Antioch or Oakley, you'd have that model ordinance in place. And at that point, I think you would find that the concepts in it are useful to you. The ordinance by no means would require you to have these programs. It would not, it wouldn't legislate that programs have to exist. It would simply be a tool for you to use if a provider comes to you and says, I'd like to deploy within your community.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense. Yes, thank you.
And just in terms of Councilmember Haskew, Commissioner Haskew, I wanted to mention too that the City of Walnut Creek staff is, I think, doing a really great job right now on what they're calling micromobility 2.0. I think they learned a lot from the Lime Bike experience and really should be congratulated for working now to put together a program that I think will address many of the issues you just brought up.
Okay, thank you, David. So are there any other comments from the board here? Any public comments? No, then do we need a motion to approve this? It looks like it's on here. So yes, okay, so do I hear a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendations. There were
I'll
two things
second it.
Okay,
that
so
Matt brought up.
first by Dave, second by Kevin. Any discussion? Jackie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Committee Member Haskew,
Yes.
Committee Member Hudson,
Yes,
Committee Member Mitchoff,
Yes.
Vice Chair Romick,
Yes,
and Chair Kelly.
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so those are the two agenda items. We do have some correspondence. Are there, I don't have any particular report or comments here. Does anyone else have any comments? No commissioner comments? Randy, do you have anything?
Yeah,
yes.
go ahead, Kevin.
Kevin? We lost?
Damn. Yeah, no, this is Kevin. I had, I pushed a couple buttons on my phone and a little wacko on me. Question for Randy regarding shelter in place. You know, the rules have been relaxed. Home construction is back up and active again as of this Monday. There's more traffic on the road. With our construction needs, how's that going to affect our construction needs?
So can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, thanks. So as you know, we take this COVID requirements pretty seriously, and we've read the new order. It's actually more stringent. It hasn't relaxed anything. It's actually gotten a little more stringent on the construction side. So John Huang is our business continuity officer. So he and I have read the document from front to back. And from a CCTA staff perspective, I think a couple of days ago, we modified and added on a couple of items about face mask and social spacing to our protocol list. And we've pasted the new orders on the door at our office and kind of reminded everybody to be careful when you're touching the printer or the door handles and things that are repeatedly touched. If you get a chance to wash them or use some kind of a cleaning wipe. But other than that, from our perspective in the office, it's not too onerous because we don't get a lot of foot traffic. In fact, right now we don't get any foot traffic. It's on the construction side that has kind of changed, and so we're actually under Appendix B2 because we're under the heavy construction side, and so it has asked for a number of different things. One, it's changing the protocol that the workers have to adhere to. And so they're asking the contractors to prepare a new updated site-specific health and safety plan that addresses the COVID virus. And that plan has to be translated into Spanish. And so you have to keep a daily log of attendees on and off the job site. And as you know, both of our projects stretch for 1 to 5 miles or even 10 in some cases. And so we're not working in one location, but we're working all along State Route 4. Now, when we're paving, there's a lot of people in one small area, but other than that, they're on 680. They're all up and down Interstate 680. And so the other thing is the contractor has to sign a COVID-19 safety officer that has to have OSHA training, and then also a COVID third-party job safety accountability supervisor. And so both of our contractors has agreed to do that. Bay City Paving on Interstate 680 has just assumed that role. That they're not asking for any dollars to fund the COVID officer. But our other contractor, Broser, Murr and Wald, have asked for some help. And so we've agreed through a change order to, pay them, help compensate them for that cost of that COVID officer and the other super COVID supervisor. The issue here today was I just got notified that Caltrans does not want to participate in that. And so I did talk to our district director, and apparently Sacramento is not going to participate in hiring a COVID safety officer. I'm not sure what they're doing on their projects. But if they're not, and it's pretty clear in this document that when the county inspectors come by, I would imagine if you don't have all the protocols in place, that they could shut your project down, which means that, let's say it's $20,000 a month, it's probably going to be about $100,000, $200,000 a day on delay costs if they shut our contract down for a day or two. And so the magnitude of the cost is one thing, but I think the workers' safety is probably paramount. And so if the county health officer thinks that we need to put these positions in place to safeguard our contractors, which really is an extension of our staff, then I think it's worth it. And so the only setback that we've got so far is that we were notified today Caltrans is not going to participate in that change order on 684.
Randy, it's Karen, and you and I talked about this earlier, and just with the question coming up in your conversation, since this is vital's not the word, but important infrastructure. And I haven't read the order, and I know you and John have, but before this new order came out, my recollection is that if it was critical infrastructure for public safety, that kind of construction could go forward with appropriate things in place. So would this not continue that, or with the new order, did all construction come under the new order, and there's no more critical public safety infrastructure exemption?
Yeah, so what we're under is public works projects. So the board has deemed the authority work essential services, and so we've continued ahead and we've followed the guidelines, which initially were much like the guidelines of going in the office. If you're sick,
Right, that's what I'm thinking, and I didn't know that they got more strict for essential public works projects. And Candace Anderson and I are sharing a committee meeting tomorrow on business practices, and I want to bring this up if there's a problem, because what we're concerned about are taxpayer dollars that don't really need to be spent.
Yeah, so if you think about a project that's the Interstate 680, for example, that's about 10 miles long.
Right.
So if you're going to have an attendance sheet to have everybody check in all along that route, you're going to, that's all virtually impossible. I mean,
and I know that, Randy. So that's my question. Would this not fall under critical infrastructure, and there was no exemption in the new order as there was in the past? Because for April, you got to go forward because it was critical infrastructure, but you didn't have to have the safety officer. You didn't have to take, I'll call it roll call and all that stuff. So I've not read the incomplete order because I've been dealing with swimming pools and baseball clubs. So, but this is critical. So in reading the new order, there's no exemption anymore for critical infrastructure?
No. So
right.
There's two appendix. There's Appendix B1 for like home construction.
Right.
And B2, and that's heavy construction. That's probably what we fit under. And so we're trying to highlight those things that we need to do in order to meet the criteria of Appendix B2. And so we've talked to our contractors. We've sent them copies of the health officer's orders and asked them to comply. And, they both didn't bat an eyelash. They just said, we'll do it. And our one contractor said, it's going to cost us some money, so we'd like to be compensated. And we agree.
Okay. If you find that there's anything in that new order that is overly onerous, send me an email and we'll get it before the committee to give direction for maybe a little bit of relaxing.
Okay, that'd be perfect. We'll send you tomorrow morning a list of those things that we're finding that are hard to comply with. I mean,
that would be great. Our meeting's at 10 o'clock. I'm sorry, I know this is short notice, but even a bullet point you know, Supervisor Mitchoff, here are the issues that are really onerous. Can we get some clarification or relaxation on these?
Great, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
thank you, Evan, for that question.
Okay, thank you. Brandy, anything else you want to say?
No, thank you for your patience. This is a new process. The team is working hard in the background, trying to make sure everything stays up and where the meetings are run efficiently and we're all safe. So thank you to Terry Ann, Jackie, Tim, and the team at CCTA for all the work that you do in the background to make sure these new processes work properly. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
I love
Yeah.
Kim having his picture up. He doesn't want us to see what he's doing.
He might have messy hair.
Oh, really? Ha 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 ha. He isn't even responding. Oh, Tim, are you there, Tim? No, he's off.
I'm right here.
There he
There he
is.
is.
Yay. He's got a t-shirt on. You just didn't want to appear. You guys look great. Don't, you know. Dave's got a tie. Boo.
Okay, so,
I'm the professional.
okay, folks, so I have to actually go off to another meeting in a few minutes. So unless there's any other comments, we will adjourn, and our next meeting is scheduled for June 3rd at 6:00 p.m.
Thank you. Good meeting,
Thank you
Chris.
very much. Meeting's
Good
adjourned.
job.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody.
Thank you.